A maverick detective goes undercover in a prison to find out why so many prisoners are dying. He discovers it's all part of a highly organized and lucrative trade in human organs, and once his cover is blown, it looks as though he is next for the chop. So continuing in my abundance of action movie reviews lately, we're talking about Death Warrant, which came out in 1990 and again stars Jean-Claude Van Damme. One of my favorite action stars ever at this point. I mean, my favorite's always going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, he's my hero since I was a kid, still one of my favorite actors of all time in general. But after that, it's definitely Van Damme for me at this point. I've been doing a lot of Van Damme videos periodically over the past couple months, and I don't mind, and it's going to continue. I do plan on getting back to more horror movies, I swear to that. Individual horror movie reviews, as well as some ranking videos coming up of different franchises. It should be fun. It's just hard, you know. I try to have a personal life with my girlfriend. I have a full-time job, so, and then like 10 shows I watch during the week. So you know, it's difficult sometimes, but I enjoy it when I can. But yeah, Death Warrant. There's one I was curious about for a while. I was going to buy it on a Blu-ray set, which I still will. But luckily for me, it was free on demand with Starz Encore, so I finally decided to check it out. I was pretty excited too. And I gotta say, this is a pretty good one. You really don't hear much about Death Warrant in comparison to Van Damme's other projects, you know, especially in the 80s and 90s. You always hear about Bloodsport, of course. You know, you hear about Universal Soldier. You know, Hard Target. You even hear about Sudden Death, I feel like, more than this one. Which I know came out at a different point. No, 95, okay, good. But there's just a bunch I only hear about more than this one, and I feel like this one definitely deserves a little bit more attention. I mean, it is a simple premise. You know, he's done more than one prison type of film. There's In Hell in the mid-2000s, which is a very different film, yes, in a prison, but it's a little bit more Shawshank Redemption kind of thing, whereas this one is a little bit more what you'd expect Van Damme action movie in a prison, which is fine too. But yeah, simple premise, you know, cop going undercover, and you can imagine what entails because of it. He also has this history with this guy called the Sandman, played by Robert Kilpatrick. A pretty over-the-top villain, but nonetheless he has a good presence to him. You know, something's happened with his partner at the beginning of the film, and, you know, the Sandman guy is sort of haunting over him. And, of course, he turns out to still be alive, and, you know, thus his biggest sort of overarching threat in the prison. But, yeah, like I said, over-the-top villain, but I'd rather have someone like that, or, for instance, the villain in Cyborg, that are a bit overboard, but at least they stand out. At least it's not just some guy all the time, you know. So he's pretty good. Van Damme himself, he's definitely at his best. You know, this is probably still at his peak within his career, and he's good here. I guess he was actually competing with, according to IMDb anyway, competing with Steven Seagal for this role. They were going to go for Bruce Willis at one point, according to that, but turned it down or something. So it was him and Steven Seagal. And if you know anything about them, you know they have a history and sort of, you know, issues with each other. Mostly Van Damme being a somewhat classy guy, and Seagal thinking he's God, like he does in comparison to a lot of people. But Van Damme got the role, thank God. But yeah, you know, this film probably wasn't very hard for Van Damme to do. I mean, there's not a ton of crazy fight scenes, but there are some good ones, you know, entertaining enough with you knowing what you're in for. Favorite one's probably like in this laundry area right here. You know, it's a couple guys, one after the other, of course. There's some good moves, some pretty smooth choreography and back and forth with Van Damme there. And the final fight he has with the Sandman is pretty good, and it went on actually for a decent bit, which I enjoyed. Under that Sandman character, he had a slight horror element to it, just because of the way he was presented and sort of built up. Especially at the beginning when they introduce him, he's kind of intense. But yeah, I enjoyed it. You also have this attorney, I think he's tied to, that's supposed to pose as his wife to sort of, you know, route information back and forth, you know, when she goes to visit him, played by Cynthia Gibb. And she is pretty good too. I was kind of surprised by how much I did like her. She is pretty believable in the role. Now there is sort of like a building romance between the two, and there's really not much to it. I mean, they just sort of end up hooking up eventually, and it is what it is. But it's fine. I've definitely seen worse or more sort of annoying, points like that in action movies, and it doesn't really take away from anything. Let's see. Let's try and make sure I have all the names right. Alright. Yeah, there's this guy. For some reason I can't find his name right now. Maybe? Hey, okay, good. Robert Gilliam. I just butchered his name, I'm sorry. He ends up sort of befriending Van Damme's character within the prison. Van Damme's character's name is Burke, by the way. And he's a good actor. I mean, he sort of has that Morgan Freeman vibe about him, and he has this other guy he's connected to named Priest, and I think it's kind of set up pretty quickly, but it's kind of an organized group within the prison. He's been there a while, so that worked for what it was too. So yeah, there's nothing like necessarily mind-blowing about this movie, but yeah, if you're a fan of Van Damme, you'll definitely have a good enough time with this one. It's definitely worth buying along with the rest of your collection, which I will do, which is why I'm giving this one about a B, or an 83%. Pretty solid one. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about Death Warrant, if you've seen it, or what's your favorite 80s, 90s Van Damme film. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like, subscribe. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.